As a journalist and former university broadcast journalism professor, I've always been amazed at how liberal the journalism profession has become in the U.S. Many local media, as well as the national press, seem to share a liberal bent on just about all their reporting. It wasn't always this way. A study a few years ago in the American Journalist in the Digital Age survey showed that reporters' leanings and attitudes have been sliding toward liberalism for a number of decades. In 1971, Republicans made up 25.7% of all journalists. Democrats were 35.5%, and independents were 32.5%. Some 6.3% of responses were other. By 2014, the year of the last survey, the share of journalists identifying as Republican had shrunk to 7.1%, an 18.6 percentage point drop. Democrats outnumber Republicans today by 4-1. The share of journalists calling themselves independent has surged to 50.2%. Now, this does not mean, though, that most journalists always do things down the middle. Other studies show independents are usually left of center on social issues, but centrists on fiscal issues. So journalists identifying themselves as centrists are really on the moderate left. So what has happened at our U.S. journalism schools to cause graduates to have an obvious liberal bias? Here's what I think. From my experience at a major Big Ten journalism school 25 years ago, I could see that the majority of professors all across the campus were by and large liberal in their behind-the-scenes beliefs. Conservative professors are less hired and generally have a much harder path to getting tenure. This was not the case so much until the 1960s and 70s. Students, and especially journalism, are taught by their liberal professors to use reporting angles that promote secular humanism. This often puts students at odds with Western religious beliefs and traditional American values, like the family. I believe students are rewarded, actually, in their grades for having liberal slants on politics, religion, economic policies, border security, morality, and traditional American values. For the last 30 to 40 years, this is how liberal biased journalism has flourished. The newspapers and television outlets then hire liberally indoctrinated journalism graduates and other liberal reporters that aspire to want to change the world. This human secularism and anti-conservative agenda becomes more important sometimes than providing truth and traditional reporting. With all the major U.S. newspapers, TV networks, and press having a mostly liberal viewpoint, it's easy to understand how journalism has changed. Fortunately, the American public has more and more grown tired of their liberal bias and lack of truth, and are turning to alternative news options to get their real news. Instead of trying to fix their bias to remain economically viable, the major news media and even local outlets snub their noses to the public and continue their financial slide. Study after study shows, despite their denials, that it's now pretty much a fact that journalism is one of the most left-wing of all professions. It was commonly believed years ago that the media's cultural beat writers, book and movie reviewers, and op-ed writers all shared a left-leaning bent apart from other reporters. But studies now show the hint of bias now infects all of journalism, not only the cultural and opinion spinners. We've all heard how most colleges have become bastions of political correctness, liberalism, and in some cases, anti-free speech. This has made its way into college journalism schools as well. A 2011 study in the Chronicle of Higher Education's Innovation blog gave us some insight. The professoriate has acquired a reputation as being a liberal occupation, that liberals today, acting on the basis of this reputation and seeking careers that accord with their political identities, are more likely than conservatives who aspire to become academics. The study also found that success in academia usually requires wide open-mindedness to political and social issues. And keep in mind, too, that professors are, on average, less religious and less accepting of our founding fathers' traditional beliefs. So that's my take on why there's so much liberal media bias. I think it starts with indoctrination at most of the colleges and universities journalists are taught at. When they get jobs in the journalism profession, they're rewarded for their secular, humanistic, and anti-conservative traditional beliefs. This is H.A. Graves.